Good afternoon, good evening. Where's the evening already? Good evening. Good night, actually. It's very late. We're learning the Chatzar Yosef. We're continuing where we left off. We're in chapter 15, section 2. This is video number 3 on this section. We're learning about the city of Beitar, which was a city that was destroyed by the Romans shortly after the destruction of the Second Temple. We're fresh off Tisha B'Av yesterday. We still have the taste in our mouths, or lack thereof. And the Gemara makes the following statement. Of course, this Gemara appears in Masechet Gittin. The Gemara says like this: "Gada b'chorei af kol keren Yisrael." It quotes a verse from the book of Eicha, which we read on Tisha B'Av twice. Book of Eicha, Lamentations 2:3, regarding the war. He has cut off in his anger all the horn of Israel. That's the pasuk. Rabbi Zera says in the name of Rabbi Abahu, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, these are the 80,000 horns of war who entered the city of Beitar at the time the enemy took it. And they killed in it men, women, and children until their blood went and fell into the Yam HaGadol, the Great Sea, which is the Mediterranean Sea. I'm just reading on page 231. Lest you say that the city of the Beitar was close to the sea, and therefore it's no big deal that the blood went inside there, you should know that it was away from the sea the distance of a mil. That's what the Gemara says. Then we had a bunch of questions, of course. Look in section video number 1 in this section to see all the questions and all the commentaries. We are now in the Chatzar Yosef, where we left off last time, page 234. So, the Maharal alluded to an idea regarding the cube, the physical cube. The cube of reality, so to speak. The cube is the three-dimensional object that represents physical reality that we live in, the three-dimensional world, most plainly, right? The cube, it has 3 sides, 3 dimensions, obviously, and it has 6 sides. The Maharal alluded to it. We're going to talk about it here now and delve a little deeper into it. In the deeper wisdom, as the Maharal alluded to, physical reality is likened to its most simple representation, which is a cube. 6 sides or directions, 3 spatial planes, and 12 edges or lines that construct it. The cube has 12 lines, 12 edges. Thus, using the concept of the kolel we talked about means the includer. This is an idea in gematria. Whenever you calculate the numerical value of a word, you can add the kolel, which is basically 1, the number 1 for the entire word. Sometimes if it's a phrase that you're calculating, several words, you would count 1 for each word, 1 plus 1 plus 1, whatever it is, how many words it is, and add it to the overall total, and that could give you another deeper meaning. So using the concept of kolel, these 12 lines culminate together, right? There's 12 separate lines of the cube, but you can combine them. They all continue, they're continuous, which is sort of an extra line, an extra entity on its own. That would be the 13th element, forging one unified extant entity, one living, breathing thing, complete. Of course, the word echad in Hebrew, aleph, chet, dalid, which means 1, has the gematria of what? 13. Aleph is 1, chet is 8, and dalid is 4. Added together, you have 13. That represents the oneness, when things come together and become one unit. That is an element of 13. Look at number 15 as well. The word ahava, also, love, has gematria of 13. Why? Because what's true love? Defined by the Torah, when 2 or more things bond to become one unity, one family, one being. 13 again. Israel as well, the nation of Israel, is actually made up of 13 tribes and not 12, since the tribe of Yosef was split up into 2, Ephraim and Menashe. Right, I was talking about this on Shabbat with a lot of people. Anytime the number of tribes is counted in the Torah, it's always 12. But we know really there's 13. Why? Because Yosef became 2. So you have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, etc. When you get to Yosef, that's actually Moshe and Ephraim, so that becomes 13 total. And whenever they're counted in the Torah, they're always counted as 12, and one tribe is left out. It depends on the context. Sometimes Levi is left out. Sometimes Shimon is left out because Shimon did not get an inheritance onto themselves in the land because of the curse, so to speak, or the bad thing that Yaakov said about Shimon on his passing. And Shimon, because of what they did when they infiltrated the city of Shechem, Shimon and Levi, and they killed everybody. Yaakov did not approve of it. Levi later on, and the tribe of Levi later on rectified that issue by not worshiping the golden calf, by being holy and all this, and having the Kohanim come from them, and standing with God, taking the role of the firstborns, the Leviim. So Levi made up for it. Shimon never did. So Shimon never got a piece in the land. So sometimes he's not counted. Yeah.
When they divided the land,
He did.
yeah.
Yes.
And not Shimon.
Yes. If Menashe actually got two spots, one spot on this side of the Jordan River, one spot on that side of the Jordan River. That's the crazy part. But Shimon, they were swallowed up, so to speak, within Yehuda, the portion of Yehuda.
So what else was 12 versus 13? What's 13? Everything is 12.
What do you mean?
So they split the land into 12 parts.
Yes, 12 parts. Yes, 12 parts. Anytime there's a counting of the tribes in the Torah, it's 12. Even though there's really 13. It's an amazing thing.
They count the tribes.
They always count 12.
They count Yosef as one.
Sometimes they count Yosef as one. That's another way, right? So sometimes Joseph's counted as one. Most of the times he's counted as two, Menashe and Ephraim, and one of them is left out, either Levi or Shimon. That's what it is. Look throughout all the places in the Torah, you'll see. And there's always a reason why one is left out. Okay. But the point I'm trying to tell you is that 12 is really 13, right? 13 is a big number in Torah. As we said, it's echad, it's oneness. It's the 13th element of all the lines of the cube comes together being one. There's 12 mazalot, there's 12 sections of the universe that the astrologers look at based on the earth as it turns, and we see different parts of the world. And when you make a full pizza pie circle cut up into 12 slices, you get 12 slices of the universe, and each one is called a mazal, a constellation, and each one of the tribes corresponds to one of them. But the 13th element is all of them together. Am Yisrael is all of them, the whole donut, so to speak, as one, right? That's the 13th element. So in the holy encampment throughout the wilderness, I'll give you another example here, right? The tribes had a special way that they had to encamp. In Parashat Bamidbar, it details exactly where each tribe had to put their camp as they were traveling through the 40 years in the wilderness. Each of the 13 tribes was given an assigned formation. Three tribes per each of the four directions, meaning north, south, east, west, and with the tribe of Levi in the center. The center was Levi, the center of the center was the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and then you had the north side, south side, east, west, and there was four tribes in each part of those. There was three in each one of them, yes. 3 times 4 is 12, plus the middle is 13. Each of the 12 tribes represented one line on this idyllic cube that we're going to refer to, the cube, this conceptual cube of reality. While the tribe of Levi unified the nation into one, since it was their job to do the holy service in the Mishkan, the Kohanim, the Leviim, on behalf of the entire nation. So they were like the inner part of the cube, so to speak.
Are we counting the cube as one, or are we counting the center as one?
Everything together. Everything together. Mesh it into one. As the Maharal mentioned, there are 8 corners that manifest on this cube. Right? Any cube has 8 corners. It should come as no surprise that the word keren, kuf resh nun sofit, the word that we are constantly analyzing in this chapter, because the Gemara mentioned the word keren, we said that God cut off all the keren, all the horn of Israel, and we spoke about what that meant in the last two videos, that it's a certain energy, a attribute, a light of God that goes beyond reality. The word keren also means corner. Corner. Look at number 18. Interestingly, the word corner in English probably etymologically stems from the word keren. It has the same root. K sound, a R sound, and an N sound. Keren, corner. Probably comes from there. A lot of words in all the languages throughout the world, especially English, a lot of them, come from Hebrew words. Stem from there. I can give you a whole lecture about that, not right now. The geometric definition of a corner is what? What's a corner in geometry? It's when three sides of an object meet. Three lines, sides of a 3D object meet together, that creates a corner. Just as a corner is where three sides meet, keren, this word that we're thinking about in this chapter, is where three supernal energies meet. As in, the utilization of the Chesed, Din, and Rachamim triangle aimed at tapping into the realm of the upper three to transcend the physical. This connects back to section 1 of this chapter, when we spoke about the depths of the 10 Sefirot. The Sefirah of Chesed, Din, and Rachamim especially, the three-step system of how it applies to everything in the world. And how the people of Beitar wanted to use this to go deeply up, to transcend, not deeply up yet, transcend as far as they could into the upper worlds. And that they were honing this three-step system, and that they knew about it, and they put it into their lives. It was part of their minhagim, part of their customs with the trees and all that. Look at section 1. They knew about this. Three sides, and it connects to the idea of keren, because we said keren is a corner. A corner means three sides come together. What three sides are talking about? These three elements of Chesed, Din, and Rachamim come together, aiming upwards. This is also why the formation of the holy encampment of Israel in the wilderness was 3 tribes per direction, like we just said. You corrected me. 3 sides on every side. 3 tribes on every side. 1 tribe for each line of the idyllic cube, forming 8 corners. 1 tribe for each line. Right? Because there's 12 lines and 8 corners, forming 8 corners. Again, it should come as no surprise that the signal the Torah prescribed for notifying the encampments to rise up, right? The Torah says they had a system. The Torah writes that there has to be a special system of when they know to start moving the camp and then to stop moving, to settle. Certain tribes had to, in order, start camping, and then the other one would follow it, and the other one would follow it. It was like a domino effect. They all came together, and they all rose up and moved together in the reverse way, in the reverse domino effect. What was the signal when they knew they had to travel? It was the blowing of special karanot. What's a karanot? Horns, trumpets. It's all there. The idea of keren is throughout this entire thing.
So they would have a horn to move, and they would have a horn.
Yes, special horn blasts to move, to start moving, and to stop moving.
But once it would stop, they don't know when the next one would start.
Yes, they had they did not know how long each journey was going to be. They just followed the cloud of God. When the cloud of God stopped, it rested on the Mishkan. That's how they knew that they had to start blowing the horns and start camping again. When the cloud of God rose up and started moving, then all the tribes would start going. Yehudah was the first one, I believe, and then again the look in Parashat Bamidbar, all the details are there with commentary. Thus, the holy encampment of Israel in the desert was a moving spectacle of reality. Do you see that? God said, these people are going to be my middlemen. From me to my three-dimensional physical world that I created, these people are going to control it, dictate it, the Jewish people, and hopefully house me in it. Because what was the middle of that entire encampment? The Mishkan. What was inside the Mishkan? The Holy of Holies. What was that? The cloud of God. That whole thing was a mini Olam Haba. Microcosm. The holy encampment of Israel in the desert was a moving spectacle of reality, embodying this idyllic cube of reality. Everything within the encampment, adherence to the Torah, was real. Within the encampment existed the 8 horns or corners, the means to transcend reality. Because 8 represents going beyond the physical. Physical is 7, 8 is beyond 7. Since only when one is fully in tune with reality can he transcend it. On the other hand, those who contracted the impurity of tzara'at, right? Whenever somebody got tzara'at there in the encampment, in the desert, as a result of transgressing major sins, such as the sinful speech, that's someone who gets tzara'at, right? That's the skin lesions, skin sickness, spiritual sickness that manifested on somebody's skin. If they got that, they were banished outside the confines of the camp. They were not allowed to stay inside the camp. They had to stay outside this whole idyllic cube. The whole encampment, they had to move out of it, further out. Since by sinning, they dabbled with unreality. Look at the depth. When you sin, you're basically saying, you're denying reality. What's reality? God. God said, don't do this. Person does it, he steps outside reality. In that moment, whether he likes it or not, what you're doing is, what the Chatzar Yosef convinced you to do, in that moment when a person sins, is, I do not believe that this is real. Meaning you're denying what reality is, and therefore you stepped out of that realm. That's the only way. The Gemara says famously, I think we saw it way in the beginning. En adam chote ere imken nichnas bo ruach shtut. A person doesn't sin unless a spirit of stupidity enters him. That's what this is talking about. How could you deny the reality of God? He told you don't do this. Again, we're talking about somebody who knows it's wrong, he does it anyway. Now, it doesn't mean that you can, doesn't mean that you get off the hook if you didn't know it's wrong and you did it. There's still consequences. Let's not get that twisted. There are consequences. God created the world with reward and punishment, right? Some people nowadays want to say there's no such thing as punishment, but that's a complete misnomer. It's false, right? God didn't change the rules of His creation just because of certain, historical contexts or consequences. The rules of engagement still apply, but that's neither here nor there. That's for a side conversation. So, when a person sins, he's dabbling with unreality, making him incompatible with the inside of the camp, because that camp, as we're describing it now, was connected, interwoven with the representation of reality as it is, which is the whole, it represents the cube, the 12 lines, 13, 8, keren, horns, all of that we just mentioned. That represents control of the physical world. And if a person wants to transcend beyond that, he has to first master that. Then you can tap into beyond physical, the metaphysical, and then bring it back down. It's like a boomerang. Then the channel is open for both upper and lower to intertwine and interact. Transcendence is the process of unification of reality. Sinful speech only further divides reality. That's why a person who got tzaraat from speaking Lashon Hara, he had to step outside of the camp because he is no longer compatible with the confines of the camp. Good, let's do one more paragraph. Yes, one more paragraph. With this, we may offer a deeper interpretation of the verse Echad 2:3 in our Gemara that we started with, where our Gemara says the verse in Echad says, He has cut off in His anger all the horn of Israel, referring to Hashem, that Hashem severed the avenues of transcendence, which we're saying that the beams, represents this power to go beyond reality, to go beyond the physical. It means that Hashem severed those avenues of transcendence that the people of Beitar were able to achieve because they did not use it properly. That is our thesis in this section, that the people of Beitar were very holy, at a very high level, they were able to transcend, as we saw in the first section, but God cut them off, so to speak. He cut off those avenues, those powers that they achieved, because they didn't use it properly. They forgot something major. What's that? As we said, proper transcendence is achieved in unification of reality. You have to unify reality and then blast above it. But the problem was that the people of Beitar were not unified. Since there was still, as we know historically, there was strong political strife amongst the people in that era. So, and previously in the book, we spoke about the 4 different major political groups that existed at the time. Some wanted to fight the Romans, some wanted to appease them, be diplomatic with them. Some wanted to just avoid it altogether, right? The Essenes, we spoke about the 4 major groups. There's a lot of, just like today, unfortunately, a lot of disagreement amongst the leadership of Jews. All that divide caused for a faulty transcendence.
When we say unification of reality, what do we mean? Because it's one thing to be unified with reality and one thing to be unified with each other.
So both. Unity in general. Because, good question. So I mean both here. I mean both. When the people are united, right? Look at the example of the for example, like we just spoke about, the tribes traveling through the desert. They were united people. They had issues, but they traveled together in that uniform way that we spoke about, specifically in that way. And God's presence is with them. The clouds of glory guided them. That supported the fact that they were united. So the people together, but at the same time as well, unifying reality, meaning, look, I think we're going to see it soon. So now, all that divide caused for a faulty transcendence. There are plenty of words in Hebrew that connote cutting, to cut, or severing, cut something off of something. There's a lot of different words that mean cutting. It seems that in Echa 2:3, our verse that we're speaking about, it uses the word gada, gimel daled ayin, to connote cut off. This word means literally to amputate. A gideya is somebody who is an amputee, lost a limb. That's what it means, to cut something off of a bigger structure. So it's like God amputated the horns, so to speak. They were part of them, the people of Beitar, and God amputated them off. Why does it use this word versus any other word? For example, there's chatach, there's koret, so many words for cutting. Kotzetz. Why this word? Perhaps because of the following thing. If you take the letter gimel, the first letter, it is the gematria, the numerical value is 3. The next letter is dalid, the numerical value is 4. When multiplied together, 3 times 4 is 12, which are the lines of the idyllic cube that we're referring to, that makes the 8 corners, horns. Then ayin equals 70, that's the last letter, equals 70. And that number is the number of roots of Gentile nations that there are. Meaning there were 70 lineages, 70 lines that came out of Noach. Right? We have that listed in Parashat Noach over there. And every person today can trace himself back to one of those 70 lineages. And there are 70 ministering angels in Shamayim whose job it is to represent one of these lines. Right? Famously, on Sukkot, the Torah writes that there has to be 70 different cows that are brought up throughout the 7 days of Sukkot, starting with 14 and then going down. 14, 13, 12, 11. The total becomes 70. Why? Because the Beit HaMikdash, it maintained the entire world, not just the Jewish world, the entire world. Each one of those cows represented one of those 70 lines of people from Noach. And it upheld them, sustained them for the year. That's what the Maharal writes famously. The Gemara actually also says somewhere, I forget where. It says that if, in the Maharal writer, there's a source that says that if the nations knew how beneficial the Beit HaMikdash was not only for us but for them, they would never have destroyed it. Right? So what am I saying here with the word gada, cut off? Gimel is 3, Dalet is 4, 3 times 4 is 12. 12 is the 12 lines of the idyllic cube, which represents the 8 corners. Each one of those corners is one of the Sefirot, one of the lower 7 Sefirot, plus the 8th one, which is the top 3. The 8th element includes the top 3 altogether. So that gives you 8, and then 70. Why 70? What's the point I'm trying to tell you here? This word says the whole story. Hashem cut off the horns or the corners, those powers, which are the avenues of transcendence that the people of Beitar mastered, and He gave them to the Gentile nations. As the Midrash that we said last week says above clearly, it says that. It says He cut the horns off and He spread them out throughout the other nations. This is the depth of our Gemara's explanation of the verse, when it says these horns are the 80,000 horns of war of the troops of Rome that were coming to destroy Beitar, because they used to blow horns, the soldiers. Perhaps this reveals a depth in Rashi's words as well, who wrote that the horns of war were blown to gather their legions, to gather them together, the soldiers. Meaning that the Roman troops, despite their lack of righteousness, had the critical ingredient of being gathered together in unity. That one thing was beneficial, trying to accomplish the common goal of destroying the Jews. That's what they were, unified for, agreed upon. While the Jews, however, of Beitar lacked that unity, making their mastery of transcendence not good enough to gain salvation. Look at number 23 on the bottom. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, I'm quoting you something from Bereshit Rabbah, it's a Mishnah. Midrash. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, great is peace. How great is the power of peace, of unity between people, that even if they worship idols, there is peace amongst them. It's like I, meaning Hashem, cannot overrule them, since there is peace amongst them. As it is stated, the tribe of Ephraim is attached to idols, let him be. It's a verse in Hosea. We see that unity trumps morality, meaning the power of unity is so great that many times, even if that group is unified for something not good, the fact that they're united protects them. We also see it in the Tower of Babel, right? At the end of Parashat Noach, all the people came together to build a huge tower, to rebel against God, and God didn't destroy all of them. All He did was make them famously create all the new, different languages so that they would be confused, so that they wouldn't be able to continue their project. But He didn't destroy them. He didn't kill them. Meaning why? Because by the fact that they were united for one purpose, that was good enough. That gave God pleasure or appeasement to an extent where they deserve to live. So the people of Rome were gathered together by the horn, says Rashi, to destroy them, and that was what helped them overcome the people of Beitar, even though the people of Beitar were at a much higher level, because they were not gathered together.
So if our enemies are united in the common cause,
yes, it is a problem. It's a big problem. Because the way God designed the world, something about people coming together gives them more power. Strength in numbers. We, as Jews, have to understand that. That's been our, Achilles heel, for lack of a better term, for millennia. It's really something, and then God has to remind us. God has to remind us. Listen, the Holocaust happens, other things happen. October 7th happens. They don't care what kind of Jew you are. You're a Jew. You're good enough to be killed for them. That's what God reminds us, to become unified. And really, the unity afterwards was so strong. It was so amazing. After any of these tragedies, people come together. It's an amazing thing. But it's sad that that's what we need to jolt us back into that mood of unity. Anyway, I want to finish this piece here. Furthermore, the language of the verse lends an interesting theoretic interpretation. We can look at it this way. Hashem cut off all the horns of Israel, that's what the Pasuk says, meaning He cut off all the corners of the idyllic cube. We're saying the horns are the corners of the cube. Same word, keren, same word, horn and corner. What does that mean when you take a cube, you cut off all the corners? What are you left with? When all the corners of a cube are cut off, what emerges is a sphere, spherical. If you keep cutting off the corners endlessly, because even if you make a straight cut, you created 4 more corners. Keep cutting them off infinitely, you end up with a sphere. Okay. All right, I had to defend myself there. Yes. Or, look, I wrote in number 24, you can think that the cut was done in a perfect semicircle. The cut itself was done, so that there would be no corners. What emerges is a sphere. And the sphere is the geometric shape that personifies oneness. You ever think about that? The sphere is such an amazing geometric shape. There's a lot of infinite things about a sphere. For example, there's an infinite number of points on a sphere or a circle. On the edge, there's no, meaning I'm talking about a perfect sphere. Our mechanics, our tools don't let us create perfect spheres that easily, although there are some in museums. They make, like in museums, these perfect spheres. Perfect spheres, completely perfect. If they have it, they built it, the engineers put it in a museum.
It's so hard to make.
Of course, yeah. It's hard for us to geometrically do that. But I think now with digital technology, with 3D printers and stuff, they're able to do it more accurately. But again, let's say that you need to hear. I mean, again, no ball that you buy is going to be a perfect sphere. Doing a perfect one plane complete sphere. You know, I think they have these glass balls. The glass is easier to make because of the way it behaves. But again, I digress. Spheres personify oneness. Why? Because there's an infinite number of points on it.
Pi goes on forever.
Pi goes on forever, and you know the circumference of the sphere never ends. It goes on forever, and the energies of God, they're called sphirot, from the word sphere, probably connected to that as well, from the word spirit as well. Sphirot, spirit, sphere, they're all connected. All these things. The earth is a sphere. Not perfect though. You know why it's not a perfect sphere? Pop quiz. What makes the earth not a perfect sphere? The gravity of the moon. As the moon goes around it, there's a bulge. The gravity of the moon pulls the water just enough. And that's how you get high tide and low tide. It's the gravity of the moon pulling on the earth. It's a beautiful thing. Anyway, I digress. Since sphere also has one continuous surface, and every point on the sphere is infinite. In this way, the verse hints at the oneness that Betar was lacking. Again, you see, God cut off the horns of the idyllic cube, leaving a sphere's oneness, hinting to them in this metaphorical way, this is what you're missing, Betar. The Romans had it better than you in this particular instance. Even though you guys are great, even though you guys are protruding into the upper world, as we'll see further, as we saw before as well. You guys are forgetting the point of everything. And we're going to give another example of that, B'ezrat Hashem, next week from the Gemara Masechet Berachot about Rabbi Akiva, which is going to tie into something else as well. There's a lot more to say on this. B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll build more. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen. Amen.